Well, greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to Truthseekers. Tonight, I'm so excited because we are continuing our new series, Revisiting Roswell. And tonight is going to be a special one. First of all, this was big news to me. I watched Tim Pool's show almost daily, and I tuned in, and Jeremy, alien scientist, our guest tonight, was on Tim Pool. So big congratulations to him. I mean, I think they got 500,000 viewers to tune in and listen to Jeremy. Amazing accomplishment that he got to do that. There's hope for us all. And also tonight we'll have our back again, Kal Korff, who is the author of The Truth About Roswell, among many other books, well-known researcher into many subjects, including Roswell. I want to give as much time for our discussion tonight as possible. So without any further ado, let's bring in our guests. Alien Scientist is here. How you doing, Jeremy?
Hey, man, what was up with that intro?
Oh, why? Well, you don't like it? Come on. People decide
it's like
if they're
male audience much? No,
yeah, maybe. I'm going to do one with male strippers because the girls asked. If you know.
All right.
Viewers.
Make it fair.
Look, I want to apologize to you in advance because you just did like the biggest podcast on earth, right? And now you're on my show, slumming it.
I know,
I'm
right?
Sorry about that. And let's bring in our other guests. Kal Korff, how you doing, Mr. Korff?
I'm doing fine, Stephen. How are you?
Great. I just feel bad for Jeremy because he was just on literally like the biggest podcast on earth, the biggest stream show on earth, right? Maybe except for Rogan's, right?
Second only next to Rogan. Definitely Rogan's probably number one.
Okay, so the second biggest stream show on planet Earth.
Well, now that he left YouTube, it's probably the biggest on YouTube.
Yeah. It probably is the biggest on YouTube. And so, I feel bad for Jeremy because he just was at the top of his game, right? And now he's
I don't know, man.
With me.
I think I should have nailed Bob Lazar a little harder.
I think so. It was beautiful.
I wanted to be like diplomatic about it, like invite him on to a group of physicists and let him like really have it out with some people who know science, because like I've never seen that done,
Yeah, absolutely. He wouldn't do it. He would not do it. He wouldn't even meet with. He wouldn't meet with one. He wouldn't meet with Stanton Friedman because he knew that Stanton Friedman was a real nuclear physicist and not a fake one.
Yeah, it's usually not a good sign.
So I don't even know, where do we want to begin? I know Jeremy's been doing an incredible amount of research into Battelle Institute.
You're the one having Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt and all these other guys on your show. Who's the other guy? Carey, the one you had on the other night.
Tom Carey. Yeah, Don Schmidt hasn't been on yet. We're still trying to nail down a date for him. But yeah.
So you're quite the expert yourself now. You should.
No, I'm not an expert. I'm bringing the experts here so that I can get their opinions and their beliefs about what. This is one of the greatest cases because there's just a volume of material to go through. It's like impossible to get it all. People are sending me other books that I never even heard of.
Right on. Well, hey, guess what? You got the expert here, and I'm the one who actually referred him to your show.
Yeah. People don't know this, but when I had Michael Horn on, Jeremy reached out to me and he was like, "You got to have Kal Korff come on and bust Michael Horn's bullshit after he comes on your show." And I went, "Absolutely!" And so that started a friendship. It's thanks to Jeremy here that we got Kal Korff to come on multiple times now. So thanks for that, Jeremy. It's all his fault.
Yeah, for real.
So where do you want to begin? Can we begin with something about the materials? Because I know you're very focused as a physicist, and you have an intense interest in these materials that people claim were recovered from what could have been a crashed alien spacecraft.
Yeah, there's a couple different ideas about those materials, and certainly like this idea of an unbreakable foil, something similar to tin foil, but sort of unbreakable or unrippable, and maybe made of woven fabric on the quantum, not quantum, but like nano or micro scale level. With material science, I think in the future these kind of materials could be possible. There's also all kinds of even weirder theories, which are not so outlandish, as because some of them were proposed by some of the smartest people who ever lived, including physicist John von Neumann. Kal, can you mute while you're typing just real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's me. I apologize.
Sorry, whoever's, yeah, sorry. That's
I'm tweeting out the
distracting,
show. I'm tweeting out the show.
I saw
right?
his hands moving, so I'm sorry for making the accusation.
Yeah, I apologize. I should do that.
But John von Neumann, he was like probably one of the smartest men who ever lived. Arguably, he used to be known as the human computer. He was one of the guy who actually like built the firing sequence that made the atomic bomb possible, and did most of the calculations for the atomic bomb for the Manhattan Project. He had top secret security clearances in 1947, and would have been, probably one of the top people in their field for as far as experts that would have been consulted to go out and look at a craft like Roswell. And it's interesting that he published a paper in October or late 1947 on self-replicating space probes. And I've heard talks about the machine was trying to put itself back together and things of that nature, which open up all kinds of possibilities for future technology, but as well as maybe it was a weather balloon. I don't know. I don't know weather balloons that can put themselves back together, but not that there's any direct evidence of that, because as we know, the Air Force and the military, the Manhattan Project involved over 400,000 people at that time, and they were able to keep secrets very well from them. And I think that it's quite possible, given the infrastructure available at that time, to have kept the secret like this. It's certainly plausible. It's not outside the realm of possibilities. I don't believe. But again, I'm after evidence, and and also just educating the public about science and what's possible in the future as far as aliens go.
Yeah. So Kal, though, your argument is that it was the mogul balloon, there was no alien materials. But what about all the witnesses that talk about these strange materials? Wouldn't they know the difference between mogul balloon parts and something much more exotic, like possibly an alien spacecraft?
Well, first of all, before answering, I'd just like to give everyone watching this kind of a proper orientation as far as where I'm coming from on the issue of Roswell. I've devoted my existence since October 19, 1973 to three things: conduct original research. Original research is original research. Finished research left unresolved or incomplete by others, or look at existing issues, try to understand them, add further insight, do what I can to help, and move on. And I have been consistent at that since 1973. I'm also one of the 4 original Roswell UFO researchers. I'm one of only 3 left alive. And all of them, except the one that just passed away, Stanton Friedman, believe that Roswell was mogul. The evidence for it has always existed. In fact, the reason I wrote the book I did, you mentioned Kevin Randall's book, not mine. It's the Roswell UFO Crash, What They Don't Want You to Know. This is it here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little confused. There's so many books. I apologize. Sure.
I'm just letting people know this is the book. This was written for one reason only. I call Prometheus Books because they published my Billy Meyer expose. And I said, what are you doing for the 50th anniversary of Roswell? I'm just curious, because I had heard that Carl Flock was writing a book, but he made the ridiculous conclusion that the UFO slammed into mogul and they both came down. The reason he made that conclusion, and Prometheus rightly rejected that book, is because he was trying to square the lying accounts by hoaxers like Glenn Dennis and Frank Kaufman. He didn't believe Kaufman, Randall did. But Glenn Dennis, he wanted to believe he was credible, and he ended up being a hoaxer. So when I heard what was going on, that every single publisher was going to say it was all true and they were lying, I'm being blunt. I had these discussions with publishers, okay? I was there, and we knew that Philip Corso's book was coming out, and it was going to be the bestseller. And we knew what he was going to say because he was making calls to everybody asking about Roswell, because he was trying to make up and fit his story together. He knew he was dying, going to leave some money for his family, etc. Okay, so all this goes down. And what happened, and this is a matter of record that nobody can deny unless they're a denier, and the public needs to know that. I am the person that Stanton Friedman counted on and Bill Moore counted on to be the go-to guy regarding Roswell and a handful of cases. And I have the original photos of the debris that Major Jesse Marcel signed off on and said this is what was found. Now, my book proves that when you look at the original eyewitnesses from 1947, I'm not talking about the hoaxers later. I'm talking about the original eyewitnesses. And it's all in the book. I've got a chart here to share with you. You can see that the testimonies are very consistent for a balloon. Bessie Brazel said, it looked like a balloon that had burst. That is a quote. She remembers putting her wrist through a ring. It was the O-ring on the mogul array. She said she did it because she's a girl and it reminded her of a bracelet. She thought it was cool. A lot of guys wouldn't do that. Girls apparently do. Loretta Proctor, who's touted as a witness, she only started to claim to be a witness after her husband Floyd died. In the original testimonies published in the original Roswell incident book by Bill Moore, it says very clearly they never saw anything because tires were too expensive. They didn't want to drive all the way down there, and nothing was described that made them excited. So when you break down all the testimonies, you see that you have basically Jesse Marcel and Stanton Friedman in there, basically cooking the books a bit. You look at people who handled the Roswell debris. Warrant Officer Irving Newton, he met with Professor Charles Moore years later in a Discovery Channel special. He said point blank, this is the material that was in the office. Moore still had some of it. He said, yeah, that's it. You've solved it. Okay. So when you have to separate the so-called new Roswell eyewitnesses, which are bandwagon jumpers, promoted by people who jumped on the case years later. These are people like Kevin Randall, Don Schmidt. They're not the original researchers, versus people who did the original work. And because I saw those photos in a press event with Bill Moore, which is a matter of public record, and I've never put that article on the internet. It's on the new expose on Roswell, the update. Case closed. I've got the photos. You can date them. Our fingerprints are all on it. Case closed.
But what about the debris switch? And we have Dubose and Marcel both claiming that the pictures, the famous pictures of the debris, is not what they collected at the ranch, is not what they...
No. In fact, I have published in not only in my Roswell book, but in many articles every time I've written about this, including in the new, the Annie Jacobson book here. I reprinted in there because there's a whole chapter on Roswell, what really happened. I show him saying in 3 separate interviews, he says there was no debris switch. That's bull. Okay.
Well, this is why I have such difficulty, because I have you who's... Yeah, go ahead.
I actually agree. I agree with Kal. I think the chapter in Annie Jacobson's book was absolutely wrong in her assessment. Like that this was she also said it was like a Russian hoax, and there was like
Joseph Mengele.
Yeah, and all these, and then they were using Harlequin baby bodies for the aliens and stuff. I just don't think that. You mentioned a couple witnesses like Frank Kaufman and Gerald Anderson, who came after, and Gerald Anderson had tried to embellish this Plains of St. Augustine site, which was a longer way away. And I agree. Those two both I've determined both of those witnesses not to be credible either. But
you've got to go back to foundationals. It doesn't matter what the case is. And I have limited my UFO investigations, as my published record shows, to binaries. The Meyer case, it can't be half real. You can't have 30 photos of a Pleiadian beam chip and only photos 5, 6, and 7 are real. The rest on the slide rule are fake. Physics doesn't work that way. So,
okay. So we looked into the photographers. Apparently, they brought in some other photographers. You mentioned these photographers. They didn't use the base photography. The photos that exist of Roswell, there's none actually that are in current existing record of the base, from the base. We don't have any photos in the field, and that would be like typical of like weather balloons. Like, right, they would go out to the field and like take pictures of these things where they crash and stuff. There might, especially one that was reported in the news to be, a flying saucer the next day. That one really always gets me, is why would they tell the media why would they tell the media? I forget the guy's name that told the media. Was that Haut, right? Walter Haut. Yeah, he's the guy that from the Roswell Air Force that told the media that there was a flying saucer. That's part that has always interested me, is where the mix-up occurred with the flying saucer and the weather balloon, and why the first intelligence officer who went out there to the base,
Okay.
later said those things about that debris and also that memory foil. You know, that's
And why would they bring in external photographers when the base had plenty of their own
yeah.
photographers?
Why would they use outside photographers? Because that would explain why it would all be on that one reel. You said like, oh, why wouldn't, you know, they could have just used a bunch of other photographers and kept the reels separate and kept it separate. It's called compartmentalization. I mean, you're just not using your imagination.
I understand. All right. There are several questions in there, including some from you, Stephen. Let me go through this little systematically if I can. And again, foundationals are everything. Without foundations, it doesn't matter what's built on top of it.
Yep.
Now, first of all, let me ask you, and I'm just curious, but have you read this book? Yes or no?
I have, but years ago.
Okay.
I don't think I've read your book. I would love to read it. I just I don't really, you know.
I'll be happy to have a copy sent. The reason I'm asking is because based on what you're saying, and this is not absolutely not a criticism. In fact, I want everyone watching this to know that I know nothing about you. I've read some of your posts. I'm happy to meet you finally, put a face with an alias name, Alien Scientist. And this is a cold turkey thing. I have no preparation here. I've got a few things to show people. Yeah, it really exists. But
okay, yeah. So I know but one of the big things in your book was Sheridan Cabot, and you focus a lot on Sheridan Cabot and Newton as you're like those are your two prime.
No, they're not the primary. Now I want to lay out my case because you haven't read the book. Okay, real quickly. Again, there were only a handful of original Roswell witnesses. They're all in the original book. You've got only a few. You've got Brazel. You've got Brazel Jr., who wasn't there, by the way. He lied. Okay. You've got the daughter. She was there, helped collect some of the debris. The Proctors, they were never there, never witnesses. They were very clear about that, but they do remember the phone call. Okay. Now, then you've got Major Jesse Marcel. Marcel said he knew it wasn't what they told him it was, but they never told him what it really was, meaning the material on Mogul was not classified, but its purpose was classified. Mogul was classified as a Manhattan Project of World War II. It was not declassified as a matter of bureaucratic, we don't care. And one of the things that became clear after Friedman began to chase Gerald Anderson and tie in these other stories of the plains of San Augustine and Roswell took a wrong turn, that's when Bill Moore started to get out of it, and he endorsed my conclusion it was Mogul. And the reason I found out about it is because of doing everything from working at KMI, Bob Lazar did not, and also Lawrence Livermore Lab, and finding out that sometimes absence of evidence is evidence of absence. The biggest problem with the so-called cosmic Watergate, and it involves Roswell and everything else the disclosure guys claim, is that Mossad spends no time on UFOs. Well, and that makes no logical sense if any of this is true. So Marcel never said until he looked at the debris photos, that's when he started to change his story. And that's when I took them to Friedman and said, Houston, we have a problem.
How do you know that Mossad doesn't, you know, investigate UFOs? Because like no one really knows that what Mossad investigates. So we didn't know that they were like, you know, using Jeffrey Epstein as an agent to gain intelligence on very powerful people. You know,
we knew that. We knew that. In fact, I knew about it because when I did counterintelligence work over in Europe for years, I worked with Israelis, and part of my training was not only that, but Ghislaine's father. He laundered money for Mossad. That's matter of record now. In fact, there's rumors he was killed instead of an accident on the boat. So I'm simply
but in fairness, though, Kal, like the U.S. government claimed. I remember Obama famously claimed that there was no program investigating UFOs. Years later, we find out yes, there is. Couldn't they have a program and it would just be a higher level of classification than you could have been exposed to?
Go back. Let's assume Roswell happened in 47. Let's assume it happened as even Randall claims. Okay, let's say it all happened. I'm wrong. I don't care. What matters is the truth, and we're all after it. Okay, how could the Jews not be involved in that when Jewish scientists dominated and still dominate key areas of science? The point is,
you know who Daniel Shechtman is, right?
Who?
Daniel Shechtman won the Nobel Prize for quasi-crystals. He did his postdoc at Wright-Patterson, which I thought was interesting.
Okay, but that doesn't mean it's connected to Roswell. And what I'm saying is that there's all kinds of, you know.
No, it doesn't.
No, what I'm saying, no.
If there was a secret project with scientists to leak the material out, you know, it would have allegedly the material went to Wright-Patterson and was stored at a facility underground there. That's like where Senator Barry Goldwater went after it, right?
Not exist. We know that Admiral.
Right. It does not exist officially.
No, we know that Admiral Turkowski looked at the material and he said, quote, "This sure looks like the stuff you're flying," because they sent it to him. That's the right Pat you're talking about. He said and told people, yes, this looks like the stuff you're flying. He was on the phone with Moore and said, this is it, it's mogul. Then they came up with the weather balloon story, which was a cover story. The reason the base photographer didn't photograph it is because the media was alerted and the AP photographer, Johnson, went there, okay? And he took the photos, even helped position the wreckage. What's important is that none of them described any exotic materials. Those claims are limited to Jesse Marcel after he was starting to be nailed for inconsistencies.
No, they're not. I mean,
was there more than one? There was more than one witness to the materials, though.
Yeah, but right in the Air Force's Roswell report, if you go and Control F for Sally Strickland Tadolini, she said that what Bill showed us was a piece of what I still think as fabric. It was something like aluminum foil, something like satin, something like well-tanned leather in its toughness, yet it was not precisely like any of those materials. It was about...
Other than her word that she was a witness, there's no evidence to support her claim.
Right, because the Air Force confiscated it all and threatened all the witnesses, and then they all spoke out years later. It's just as plausible of a story.
Who said they were threatened? Frankie Rowe? Because her father was in the Roswell Fire Department? They made runs outside Roswell. That doesn't prove they were on the...
Dan Dwyer was a member of the fire department too, and he said he
was involved. His daughter claims it. Beverly Bean claims her father was involved too, and he wasn't. Melvin Brown.
Sheriff Wilcox's daughters, you know, reported there was a shoebox full of the material, and they said it was not like it was crumpled up like a ball and it would unfold itself.
And those testimonies don't exist when the originals were talked to. Friedman, Moore, we tried to find everybody. And
isn't it possible if people were threatened that they kept their mouth shut for a while about it and later told their story?
Yeah, they're so threatened that they issued a press release to talk about it. No, the claims of threats have to have evidence.
That would have come after. I mean, that was before like the higher ups. So they said it went up the chain of command. It went from, you know, Blanchard over to General Ramey at Fort Worth, and then from there to Wright-Patterson. You know, I went right up the chain of command.
Okay, let me ask you this: have you read Major Jesse Marcel's military file? Yes or no?
I mean, I know your attempts to discredit Marcel as a witness. That's the best. That's all you have left on the case.
Wrong. You are mischaracterizing what I'm saying. I know how I feel and think. No one speaks for me. I do it myself. Okay. I was the first person to publish his file because what was in there needed to be made public. I'll summarize it briefly. You can't argue with it. It is a fact. It says in there that he was not a pilot. In fact, General Ramey felt sorry for him. He was written up for exaggerating events right after Roswell. It's in the report. The assistant base commander...
Better way to later discredit him if it was a real event. They could have just
No, they didn't discredit him. They said this person has a tendency to magnify problems he's confronted with, and that one day he'll make a fine officer, but he needs some work. For example, he's not a rated pilot. That's a tough handicap to have when you're full of Top Gun pilots there, the only nuclear air base at the time. Now, what happened was Marcel lied and said he had a bachelor's degree in physics. I asked Friedman, why didn't you talk to him about that? Because you love physics. Why didn't you guys share atomic stories? Well, Friedman dodged the issue because he never had a bachelor's degree in physics. Now, why would someone lie about claiming they have a bachelor's degree in physics, even name the university, and it turns out it's not true? He said he resigned from the military because of all the career opportunities in D.C. In fact, he said that he had written the announcement on the radio about the Russians blowing off a nuke. No, he didn't. Truman read a press report. Secondly, Marcel left because of a hardship discharge. It says in his file his mother was not doing well and he needed to take care of her. So as I noted in my book, there's no shame in that. But why make something up? And then He says he was the only survivor being shot down in the Pacific. That isn't true. He was never shot down. He was never an ace. He never got 5 air medals. He got 3 because he happened to get on a flight that saw some action overseas. He was a cartographer. There were other claims he made that weren't true. Even his son said to me, my father did have a tendency to exaggerate on occasion, quote, unquote. So these are all in his military files. They felt bad for him that he got it wrong and got hyped over it and talked to Walter Haut. And even Marcel said we had an eager beaver PR officer named Haut, and without authorization, he released that. And then he got a blistering rebuke because the press started calling the Pentagon in DC saying, hey, what about this flying disc? And then they found out that he spoke without permission, and then they admitted they have it, fly the wreckage, and showed it. Again, this is all in there. I'm the first one who got his file along with Bob Todd. It's all published, many pages of it. If his file said anything to support what he said, I would have published that, but it did not. And you can't ignore that. You can't say you have a degree in physics when you don't, and you make up a university you never went to. That's Jim Delatoso stuff. He doesn't have a PhD from McGill University either, but he lied and said he did.
I just was interested that the Roswell report kind of uses Newton and also Sheridan Cabot as the 2 main witnesses to discredit Lazar as well as a witness, and they use some personal testimony about him as a character and to kind of discredit his character. But it wasn't just Newton. The other CIC officer, I guess, that went out there with him was a guy named Bill. I got it written down here. It's Bill Lewis Rickett, right? Okay. And Bill Lewis Rickett said, like, you're not something to the effect of that. He said this was a non-event. That Cabot told them both that this was a non-event. This did not happen, and you're not to talk about this. And then Cabot kind of later changes his testimony about what that was in the what he meant by that. Could you care to explain and unpack that for us?
No problem. I lived in Washington. Cabot lived in Washington. I worked at Boeing at the time. We spoke. I also appeared on MSNBC All Day 50th Anniversary Roswell Special, where we went through all this with Captain and then Lieutenant McAndrew. He was on the show. Long story short is this. Cabot met with several Roswell researchers. They pissed him off. As he said on the record, they wanted to believe so badly. So he messed with them a little bit. Yeah, you right, you put down whatever. So then what happened is when the Air Force called him and went to see him, they're like, well, why don't we go on record and kind of straighten this out? Because McAndrew said on the show, you can't call a person a liar in a government report. And I was criticizing McAndrew for not being blunt. Here he is saying they're lying without using the L word. And I just thought there's enough readers out there who are going to use that as, well, he's not saying he's lying, even though it's obvious he was. So what happened is Cabot said it looked like somebody's balloon. It wasn't a big deal. He was pissed off they wasted their time because it took a while to get out there. Rickett made up a lot of stuff. He loved a good fish story. In fact, he made up stuff about investigating UFOs with Dr. Luis Alvarez, who wasn't involved in Roswell either, but he was out trying to find meteorites. He had a UFO sighting because there was the green fireball phenomenon going on at the time. And they thought maybe this might explain some of the sightings. It did explain some of the sightings, but the green fireballs were ultimately figured out to be astronomical phenomenon, not spaceships. So those are those 2 witnesses. Again, this is all old material that was proven in the 90s, and it's been out there for years. What has happened is there's been 20 years or so have gone by. I haven't been in the country, I haven't dealt with this stuff, and it's just like Stanton Friedman warned me about as a kid, and you may remember these words. He said, new ideas come into being not because people accept them, but because their opponents die, and a new generation is born that is accustomed to them. And he's paraphrasing the great Max Planck. He said, Kal, this is going to happen with UFOs especially, He was looking forward to the day when all the evil debunkers and skeptics died so that this thing could have their way. Cosmic Watergate 101, And
they all want that. They'd have a field day.
Right. The other side wants it too. I had good conversations with Phil Klass, and he told me point blank that if he could find anything, he would love it because he works at Aviation Week. There were other UFO researchers, hardcore atheists, where the idea of anything out there is just, it's all humans, the pinnacle of whatever. That's extremism the other way. So in my long-winded way, what I'm saying is that all of the core foundational stuff, where the people who were really there, no question, 1947, not the people who said, oh, now I'm seeing I was there. None of that has held up. And we have those photos. We were the first, I was the first to analyze the Ramey memo from these photos Bill Moore gave me, because they were made from the original NAICS. And that's why when others talk about molecular properties getting down in there, it's Rorschach's. It's not credible. I'll give these photos up to anybody to enhance them. They won't find any secret hidden message there. It's complete bullshit. And we dealt with this in the 80s. And it's frustrating to see people.
Yeah, there's nothing actionable that can be resolved from that, and it turns into a game of cryptography where you're just trying to crack a blurry message and to mean whatever.
Or seeing what you want to see.
Yeah, see whatever you want. Pareidolia.
Yeah. So to me, one of the big strikes against Roswell happening, the way people claim, okay, is the fact that when I lived overseas and was in over 24 different countries, talked to all kinds of people who were in the Cold War and everything else. A whole lot of stuff came out, even information that the KGB is the one that planted in France the rumors that Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy. They planted him in communist-controlled unions. It gained traction through Mark Lane, ended up in the U.S., and next thing you know, it's the granddaddy of all conspiracies.
And Jim Garrison's investigating it, right?
Yeah, exactly, all that stuff. So having been involved in this, since October 1973, when it started all this, having been mentored by Friedman, Hynek, all these guys, again, I can only tell you what happened. And if the foundationals don't hold up, it literally doesn't matter what someone says after the fact. If Meyer never had one contact with Semyazi, it doesn't matter what his photo shows.
But
I'm
Kal,
jealous.
even if
I'm
we
definitely
take,
jealous of Kal that he got to meet Stanton Friedman, though, man. You were like your picture with him at like 17 years old.
That's pretty cool.
You've been in this a long time.
Yeah, I met him when I was a kid at 13. I started lecturing because of him. I saw him. I came back to my teacher all excited. And I said, wow, a lecture. I never knew as a kid there was such a thing. And I said, I know everything he's saying. I could lecture. And he goes, well, go ahead. Next thing I know, I'm doing hundreds of lectures, thousands of them actually. Over the years.
Kal, if we take Marcel's eyewitness testimony about the debris away, there's still an awful lot of people that claim that these materials had all these strange properties. We have
but look
not
at
a lot of people on record. I mean, there's the guy's Sergeant Leroy's wife. Apparently, someone interviewed these. Someone went and like tracked a lot of these witnesses down because a lot of time period passed, and so like a lot of these guys died in like the 80s and 90s because they would have been 80 and 90 years old.
Yeah, I want you to know. I mean, I've got tables on my other monitors here of, the claim is there's hundreds of witnesses, which is not true. Again, look at the first 11, which are core. Everyone agrees these guys were there. Mac Brazel touched the debris. Kite, foil, and rubber. That is his published descriptions.
What about the sergeants, the 3 sergeants? Like
June.
Apparently, they brought just sergeants out. They didn't bring like soldiers out. It was the fire department and a bunch of sergeants who were the only ones who were brought out to have clearance.
There was no fire department. In fact, the reason that the 2 CIC agents came along is because Blanchard told Marcel, as the senior intelligence officer, I've got 2 CIC agents assigned. You take them with you. Go out and see what it is. He was thinking it might be a military. They didn't know because things were flying all over because there were these radar targets. They were seen across the country. There were rewards for them. In fact, Mogul itself had a they offered $50 reward, as I recall, if you found any piece of it and it had a tag on it. You had to turn in the tag to prove it was really from them because they wanted some of the instruments back.
What about Marcel Jr. and his description of what may be hieroglyphics? I mean, there's not hieroglyphics written on Mogul balloons, is there?
I'll get to that in just a second. Mac Brazel touched debris, kite, foil, rubber, his own words, when he said he found it in mid-June. That fits a Mogul launch window. July 4th was a made-up date, by the way. They're patriotic, those aliens. Bessie Brazel touched the debris, says a balloon which had burst, quote unquote. Major Jesse Marcel touched the debris, said it was indestructible. Okay, well, there's one claim that stands different from the other originals so far. Jesse Marcel Jr. touched the debris. He said when he looked at the photos that this looks like the stuff that was on the floor. He also said there was nothing in there that was indestructible, that couldn't be bent with a 16-pound sledgehammer. He never gave that description. In fact, my book proves, Major Jesse Marcel Sr., or his father, said that there were square sticks that the foil was attached to. Square sticks are in Mogul. Jesse Marcel Jr., when he was confronted with that fact about Mogul and shown the engineering blueprints for the first time in the 90s, he said, there were I-beams, and he was exposed for changing his story. In fact, he even changed the design of the hieroglyphs he claims he saw. Once he saw the tape from the toy factory that was used with those pink symbols on it, they were pink, that were random as part of tape. They used cheap materials. Again, he changed his story. There are published articles exposing it. It's in my book. And Major Jesse Marcel, Jr. admitted his father had a tendency to exaggerate on occasion. He was asked me and one other person what he could do to try to help save his father's reputation. The answer was, the record's out, his military files released. That's it. No more. Nothing else needs to be said. Take it or leave it. It's here, folks. And anybody could have gotten that file if they bothered.
Sergeant Leroy Wallace and Sergeant Charles Randall, people went and interviewed their families later afterward. His wife said that he reported coming back from the scene and scrubbing his hands with lye soap for 10 days straight, exclaiming that he shouldn't have never touched this material, that something was on it that got on his hands. He felt like he shouldn't have handled it.
Well, we knew that whatever was recovered was handled by plenty of people, and they lived a normal life and died naturally. Sheridan Cavett touched it. Louis Rickett touched it. James Bond Johnson touched it. Irving Newton touched it. He's in the photos. Professor Charles Moore.
Well, we don't know that Irving Newton touched it, because Irving Newton was just brought into the press office to the weather balloon that was in Ramey's office. I mean, they could have done the material switch beforehand.
No, we do know, as Sheridan Cavett said, he personally went up to the plane.
Yeah, that's Sheridan Cavett, but Newton's at right field, because the stuff was flown from Roswell to right field. And then at right field is where, not right field, sorry, at Fort Worth, Texas.
He's the base weather officer. So Ramey calls him up and says, get your ass down here, quote unquote. Commandeer a car in my name if you have to, quote unquote. He did. He came there and he said, this just came off the plane from Roswell, from Cavett and Marcel. What is it? He identifies it cold turkey. He poses with it. There was another.
No, that's not true.
No, it is true.
That's in the report, according to who?
What are you saying isn't true? That he wasn't there?
No, Newton went into they had already had this weather balloon set up. They brought Newton into the press. Irving Newton went into the press room at Fort Worth, where Ramey already had this weather balloon all set up. He didn't take the material off the plane and
took it. I said Cavett took it. Cavett took it, the sealed envelope, his own words, 3 separate interviews, affidavits. He took the material sealed in the envelope from Marcel.
He's also the guy that, Stanton Friedman accused of being leading the cover up and participating in the cover up for the military.
That's true. Yeah, Mr. Friedman told me personally that guy that
guy's no good.
Yeah, that guy was part of the cover up. If we're to believe that there was a cover up,
it's either I believe these two guys, Irving Newton and Sheridan Cavett, or I believe all these other witnesses. Either one of the two are lying. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I look at it. And I have a lot more reason to believe all these townspeople who didn't speak for 30 years because they were told to shut up about it.
There's some confusion here, gentlemen. All of us have misspoke. You have confused Cavett with Dubose, Colonel Dubose. Colonel Dubose took the envelope from Marcel from the B-29. He was the adjutant to Ramey. He walked.
Yeah, okay, so it was Dubose. Dubose said they have a video of Dubose saying there was a material switch. He's one of the guys.
Dubose,
video of him saying
Dubose says in 3 separate interviews, even with Randall, "Oh, bull, that debris was never switched." We spoke to him as well because Jamie Shandera is the one who started to realize there's a problem here with what Marcel is saying versus these other people. So here's what happened. And there's other people who know about this. Maybe even Randall does. Vivian Marcel, his wife, was asked about this. She said there was no exotic anything, and Friedman would not include her testimony. I reamed him a new what over that issue. Not only that, on the lack of a debris switch, Newton was called in to identify it because he said, the press is here. Let me call the weather guy. See what he says. Cold turkey, they called him. Commandeer a car in my name. He left the tower, came to Ramey's office, posed for photos with the other photographer as well. They're all in the photos together. So again, if you go back to the original stuff, before they started to retrofit it, well, that's the less exotic stuff that was in the photos. Oh, now you say that because we're pointing out that it matches Mogul. See, this is where the fish got bigger. And again, you have evidence independent of Roswell. He got written up for it. It's in his military file. This officer has a tendency to magnify problems he's confronted with. That was written by Colonel Payne Jennings, the assistant base commander, right after Roswell. That was not a coincidence. So this all has to be accounted for.
But Kal, all these other townspeople, like, it's not like they all made a bunch of money off of making up a story about this debris. And there's so many different witnesses that testified that this was some kind of exotic material. And plus, these intelligence officers would know a balloon. That's the big problem that I've always had. They would know what a weather balloon is versus something more exotic.
The highest ranking guy to ever come forward as a witness was, I believe, General Arthur Exon. And he was the right material science guy, like at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, that would have received this stuff.
Okay, again, it's exposed in this book. Exon admits that Randall put words in his mouth, and he says, you give me more credit for involvement than I really was. He admits, all I did was hear stories. I know nothing firsthand, but you'd never know that if you read every Roswell book except the ones that publish the full story. Because again, if the originals don't work, it doesn't matter afterwards. So how do you square them? Okay, you have to say, well, they both can't be right. So how do you explain something later with no proof? It has no proof. Exon said, you gave me more involvement than I really was. His exact words are published in this book, in his letter to Randall, saying, good book, but hey, you gave me more whatever than I just heard stories. That was it. Okay, that's different than saying he was, he did. No, he said he just heard stories. That's all. And we do know because, again, this became U.S. official policy during the Cold War in the late 40s. UFOs were then used as a deliberate disinformation campaign by the government. And I did a special back in late 1990s with Discovery called Secrets of Area 51 Revealed, where we talked about how this was done, how the SR-71 Blackbird was deliberately flown across pilots to cause UFO sightings. It was painted silver, so they saw a streaking disc go by, Mach 5. So, of course, it remained unexplained. It's contaminated the Blue Book files. They were secret flights to cover. The CIA did not tell the Air Force at that time that that plane existed. I believe the Tic Tacs today are a hodgepodge of events. I believe we do have some really gnarly ass high-powered drones. And I do believe the incident cannot be taken at face value because it's got serious problems. And that this is something the US government is doing, and this UFO task force is really a task farce. And how convenient the Navy should be in charge of it. Since when are UFOs a water problem? They're a space problem. The Air Force won the territory wars years ago. So why is the Navy in there? It's because they've got some underwater toys, and we've got vehicles that can go in the air and underwater too. So do our enemies, by the way. I found evidence of that when India was trying to join Aegis when I was working there doing defense reporting.
Well, we could go to the stories of the alien bodies then, and all these people who claim that they saw alien bodies or took part in, then those people are all lying too?
No, Stephen, nobody saw any bodies, the originals. That happened later. Even in the Roswell Incident book, the reason I showed that diagram of the hand on the last show was because that was taken from Len Stringfield's work. Len Stringfield was working with Marcel as well. We were as well, by the way. And again, I told you, and I showed you that graphic, it's all in the new book. by using anatomical experts. We talked to all these witnesses, the crash retrieval, cases, and we could tell by the anatomy problems that they were not telling the truth. But you have instead
the mortician ordered those coffins and stuff, and then they said like that all the ice was missing from town, even and all the they bought out all the ice. The army came in and bought out all the ice in the town.
Well, he says that, but he wasn't a mortician. He was an embalmer. There's a big difference. Nobody who's truthful would make another claim. Secondly, Stephen, you mentioned a good point. These people aren't making all this money. That's not true. As I showed in the book, and you may remember this, I checked with the Roswell mayor's office. On the 50th anniversary, even the press said they're absolutely giddy because 22% of the city's revenue comes from hyping Roswell. They had 5 crash sites at the time, okay? And like Hugh Corn, that's complete nonsense. So the Foster Ranch has been sold again. Who knows what's going to happen to it? Apparently the new owner, based on what I heard, doesn't care about it, the Roswell stuff. But the city loves Roswell because
they for sure the city is making money. But I mean
tourism.
Individual witnesses, the individual witnesses who told their stories Frank didn't appear to make money.
No, Frank Kaufman made a lot of money. In fact, he became world famous because of Randall, and he was the president of the Roswell Chamber of Commerce. Lucky sucker. Boy, he's blessed. And his good buddy was Glenn Dennis. So there you go. What a small world. Wow. They all happened.
I mean, just because they're opportunists and then there's evidence of certain witnesses that lied, I don't think that means we can just throw the entire baby out with the bathwater. I like to still use my imagination and say like, oh, what if, what would it be? Could it have been like those von Neumann probes? Was it, maybe it wasn't all these alien stories were a cover up just to like cover up what it really was. Like it was just like one of these space probes, like a Type 3.
That's not explained. I'm sorry. When Bill Moore, the original author of the Roswell incident, says it's meets with me and says you're right.
Well, what about the Twining-Shulgin memo? I mean, there was an Air Force memo.
Was exposed as a hoax. Look it up. Bob Todd exposed it. He found the original. It's a copy and paste job. Nobody takes.
There's also an FBI memo though, right? That talks about the recovered flying disc. Yeah, that talks about the Army recovered a flying disc and they will not give us access to it. No, that doesn't make sense.
There were 2 FBI memos. Okay, one was a paraphrasing of a original press report, which was inaccurate. And you look in that memo, and it says very clearly, it's in the Roswell incident book, that the device looks like something hanging from a kite or a balloon. Okay, that's in the description. All right. Nobody said, "Hey, we're launching Mogul to spy on Russia." No, they didn't say that. Secondly, the other FBI report was actually an FBI tip informant report. Somebody had gone to see Frank Scully. That's why they talked about 3 crash saucers, Aztec, and so on. He was reporting what he heard him talk about at a UFO get-together, was concerned, and just like Friedman was reported on by the FBI here and there, because the way he was accusing them of, being in a cover-up like that, some patriotic Americans take that a certain way and say, well, I believe my government, I'm going to report him, or they believe him and want to do things against the government. So those 2 memos are accounted for. I have to laugh when they get recycled in the internet every few years, especially by the British press. They tout as a new discovery when it's old, and the Shulgin memo again was a copy paste job. It's been exposed. You can easily Google that. Bob Todd found the original, and he was the top Roswell researcher who found Mogul. I worked with him.
Yeah, I think I might have access to that original, and it's still like it's kind of like. It uses this. It was like talking about saucer type craft, right? Is that true? They were looking at the Horton Flying V. They were asking a lot of questions about the location of where the Horton brothers were. And we do know that the Horton brothers, I believe, they were working with the Russians or something. The Russians were developed flying those flying Vs, but that was like there was certain parts in there about composites and extreme lightweight metals. You're like, was that the part that was edited in?
No, again, if you look at the original Shulgin memo, you will see that they have fused together sentences. Again, Bill Moore was shocked.
It seems like it was like almost like if they had something, but they didn't want to like really reveal what they had, but also ask questions that they like lightly. It seems like it was almost like coded language. It's like is common in intelligence.
But why can you can't make that conclusion? You have to have evidence that points to that conclusion, and I know none. You've said a bunch.
Captain Robert B. McLaughlin, he's of the U.S. Navy labs. He reported testing some of this material at White Sands Proving Ground for the U.S. Navy. He said it was a metal-like fabric that was indestructible. They tried to drill it with a carbide bit drill, and it wouldn't even drill into it. And that's not too unbelievable. I mean, we have materials that are designed to heat up the drill bit and burn the drill bit out before it, and it will just burn the drill bit out before it will ever wear through material. They have uncuttable metals now. So it's not like completely unbelievable that these materials could exist.
Okay.
They just couldn't have been built by people in the 1940s, I don't believe.
Well, first of all, again, what is the evidence he has other than a claim? I'll place a bet in Vegas he has none. Because again, without foundationals, it doesn't matter. But to come back to the point, I want to ask a question because I think you may know the answer to this. I hope you know the answer is yes. But the U.S. government, one of our closely guarded secrets, and I'm revealing it because I found out about it, and it is declassified up to a point if people bother. We developed in the 50s a plastic that could withstand a nuclear explosion. And there are some military installations underground that are fortified with it. And I found out about this many years ago. And the formula, the guy who made it, his name was leaked. He never saw it again. They bought it. But we do have a plastic, more than one, that can withstand the thermal energy discharge of nukes. And that is friggin' fantastic. And it was done in the 50s.
Yeah, it's a special type of Linex, right? That's like the truck bed liner is pretty much made out of the same kind of idea. They use it on like concrete walls, and they shoot like a bunker buster missile at it, and they show like how strong it makes their fort. Like,
well, yeah. I don't know the specifics because once I found out about it in Europe, and I found out that the formula and what it's called is classified, I stopped right there. I saw footage of the scientist talking about it. He was waxing philosophical, bittersweet, how here was his big breakthrough, and he can't say here it is and make all this money selling it.
What was his name?
Tons of things. I honestly don't remember his name. I'm sorry. It was probably 15 years ago in Europe, but I can easily find it. It's no biggie.
Yeah, if you could send that to me. If you're,
yeah. I thought of Roswell when I saw that years ago because I thought, metamaterials, all that stuff they call them now. I mean, that's an evolution of the way things are going. It's obvious that
right. I've tried to like pin down like extraterrestrial origins for this stuff, and it's that link between Dan Sheckman and Wright Pat is like the closest I've been able to like come to anything but it's nothing concrete. It's nothing that like gotcha. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't have the smoking gun, but you have a lot of smoke.
But see, those who claim they worked on the smoking gun or had it, held it in their hands, or smoked the smoking gun or whatever they claim, they need to produce some sort of evidence. Otherwise, you've got nothing. It could be, therefore it is, doesn't prove it is.
Well, does it make sense, though, that the government would just let people walk out of an installation that's top secret with alien materials so they could have proof?
No.
Or that, so asking them for proof. And listen, with all due respect, Kal, I think you're incredibly dismissive of all these eyewitness testimonies. It's just like, well, they lied and they made it up and they lied and they tacked it on later. Or, like.
I'll issue you this challenge.
There is a lot of that, though. There's a lot of people that
There
lie.
is a lot of people. Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it. Give me any witness. Let's do it. Point, counterpoint right now. Go for it. Cold turkey.
Well, cold turkey, you'd beat me at that. Sure, I need notes.
Go to do it. Bring hundreds of witnesses.
We've pretty much done that about the past hour. So, what about like?
Well, it proves I'm not dismissive. If I can tell you what really happened, it's not dismissive. You may not agree with it or may not like it. I wish they were real too. But I used to lecture saying it was real because that's the evidence that indicated at the time. I would end
I'm not saying I believe it was an alien spacecraft. I just want to play devil's advocate. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to like say, hey, like maybe, there are.
And you have to remember, Kal, too, that there's so many information sources. And for the difficulty that I have is that I read one story in a book that seems credible, and then I get to your book that says, no, that person didn't say that. They said this. So it's very difficult. It's like juggling here to go.
It's like did this person X-Files season 10 with Mr. Y, Dr. was it Dr. what or Dr. Dr. They. You know the scene? Look up the scene, Dr. They, on X-Files season 10. He says, you don't have to, you can put the truth right out in public and no one knows what to believe anymore. So what does it matter?
Well,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
just confusing. It's
Yeah,
just
'cause it's
confusing
so
because
confusing.
I find a piece of evidence and it seems real tantalizing. This guy said that, he was there, and then we get to another story. It's like, well, he didn't really say that, like this general.
okay, Arthur Exon put in writing, and again, I quoted from it. That's why I was able to put it in my book. I was shocked that he tells Randall in writing that you put words in my mouth. Okay, I'm going to run with that because that's what he said. Now, is Exxon lying or telling the truth? I can't prove it one way or another. But when he says, I didn't say that, you put words in my mouth, what am I supposed to do? Pretend he did say that? No. So, again, I haven't dismissed anybody. In fact, I pointed out the definition of a witness according to the dictionary. Most of the people that these researchers claim are witnesses, they're not. A witness.
There's a lot of secondhand witnesses or children of the original
Or
witnesses.
families or wives and stuff.
A
Yeah.
witness.
Children.
A third hand is not a witness. Okay, it's not. It's hearsay. It doesn't work that way. So again,
what about? I mean, obviously, like one of the things identified was like the scientists, because obviously, if it was an alien spacecraft that crashed there, they would have had scientists to look at this thing. They would have called scientists in.
many Jews, of course,
And what's that?
many Jews.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of those Jews that some of them escaped Nazi Germany in Operation Paperclip,
Right.
and two of them was Dr. Ernst Steinhoff. He was a trusted colleague of von Braun in 1947. He was he said that a select group of scientists. I don't know where this came. This is not. Sorry, I'm trying to find this. Let me get this straight. So he apparently Steinhoff later on in his life said something about one of his family members asked him about this, and he was interviewed, and he said that he heard that some of these materials were taken to an underground facility at Wright Airfield, and that there was a select group of paperclip scientists that were taken by federal authorities to the New Mexican desert for a purpose left unstated. One of the guys, Herman Oberth, who was von Braun's mentor, in the American Weekly in 1954, he said that it is my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. I think that they are possibly manned by intelligent observers who are members of a race that may have been investigating our Earth for centuries. I think that they possibly have been sent out to conduct systematic long-range investigations, first of men, animals, and vegetation, and more recently of atomic centers, armaments, and centers of armament production. They obviously have not come as invaders, but I believe that their present mission may be one of scientific investigation. And that's sort of interesting, so that some of these paperclip scientists were talking about aliens and extraterrestrials later on and towards the end of their life. Walter J.H. Paparidel was a German V2 rocket scientist. In the 1952 edition of Life magazine, said that I'm convinced that saucers have an out-of-this-world basis.
Okay, but in 1952, the CIA, especially, and the Air Force were involved in a deliberate disinformation campaign because, and I'm not saying they went out and caused all the UFO sightings. Don't even go there. Not you, but people who think that way, all or nothing. It's ridiculous. What I'm saying is this. Imagine aliens came here in the sense of some crashed saucer. Right. U.S. finds it. Okay, obviously they're going to want to cover it up if they don't make the decision to tell the whole world, hey, we've got it, you guys don't, neener. All right, so then what do? They would try to figure it out, okay? There would have to be a bunch of changes, cause and effect, over time that would be in response to that, even if they determined ultimately that it ran on, as Stanton Friedman used to joke with me, unobtainium, okay? So all of these UFO metamaterial, physical fragments, arts parts, all that other fraudulent stuff that was exposed again in this book, arts parts is in there. Too bad, Linda Moulton. A simple, and you know this, very few people do, who talk about this subject, a simple isotopic ratio analysis of any material will prove whether it came from our system or Earth or some alien system. If you don't bother with that test, I have no time for you because you're wasting life, existence. If
Yeah,
you're
I
not,
will say this on the claims that people have alien materials, it's a very
Yeah, we
simple
have
test, right? It's a very simple test to put it into.
it's
DNA
not
or fingerprint,
simple. I mean, a lot of labs will charge big money for that stuff, but that's why we're setting up this whole. That's why kind of like I've linked up with a lot of scientists who have access to this kind of stuff, and
okay,
we've put it out there that we'll get this material tested for you for free
yeah,
but I'll be able to look at it under a microscope and tell right away whether it's something I want to spend the money to go and get SEM or isotopic spectroscopy on.
yeah. And what I'm saying is I don't know who all your contacts are, but I have plenty of people going back decades, some of whom are still alive. I'm still younger than some of them, and it'll be done for free once it passes. Let's call it the bullshit test. Once it
Right.
passes first sniff, it is worth pursuing because you're derelict if you don't. The Ubatuba Brazil samples are a perfect example. I tried to get that thing settled years ago through the Lorenzens because the images of the spectra reading were there on the film. We could go back and be independently tested. It turns out that the equipment was not sensitive enough to detect the impurities that were there but didn't show up at the time in the 50s and 60s. Good job with the equipment at the time, like Fish's star map with the Lisi star catalog at the time, but later data proved it just didn't hold up. And it's okay to admit that. The problem is when you try to make movies saying it's true based on stuff that is no longer true. And that is getting stuck in a loop. And that was a problem Friedman and Bryce Zabel have. And this hype continues in a loop. It's now
Or
resolved.
miniature alien mummies from Peru and the like. Yes.
Oh, I
Exactly.
hate that stuff. I hate that stuff.
They made a lot of money, on pay-per-view.
But what was I going to say about that? But back to, we mentioned like Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt and some of those guys. I was digging into a lot of Anthony Brigalia's work and research over the past like 6 months, and he's been like really focused on that materials side of things, which is why, his research kind of caught my eye. And I've been sort of digging through, obviously he points out that Battelle Memorial Institute was, the leading military industrial complex metallurgist at the time, and that they'd probably be like the number one place where you'd bring alien debris if you had it. And then he looks into, some of the Battelle stuff. There was a metallurgist named Elroy John Center who apparently told his daughter that he had worked on a material like that memory foil or something that was alien while he was at Roswell. And it was, and he indeed, if you look up some of his paperwork and some of the research that he did for Battelle, not at Roswell, but at Battelle in Columbus, Ohio, which is literally 65 miles from Dayton, Ohio, where Patterson Air Force Base is. So they're in close proximity. So it makes sense that, Battelle would be a place that we'd look or investigate as researchers for, if there was indeed, alien metals that were recovered from Roswell.
That's private company, so FOIA doesn't work on Battelle.
Right. So you can't FOIA documents on it. It's done under a private corporation and you can't, it's inaccessible by FOIA. And it's interesting that Battelle kind of runs all our national labs, and I won't go there into conspiracy world too deep, but it's certainly not outside the realm of possibilities that they could have been one of these players.
Well, Battelle is a minefield because thanks to Stanton Friedman, you have Project Blue Book 14. He quoted the Battelle Memorial Institute study, Project Blue Book 14, concluding that 19.7% of all reports remain unknown and that unidentified, and that the chances of those being misinterpretations or misknowns was less than 2%. Well, again, you can contact Battelle today about Project Blue Book Special Report 14. If you get an honest person who knows about this, they'll refer you to a paper that was written exposing Friedman over this called Figures Don't Lie, but Liars Do Figure. And he showed that the Blue Book 14 didn't conclude any such thing. There was no unusually high number of unknowns and all that other stuff. But as far as Battelle being one of the top contractors, the whole FOIA thing, Bigelow being a modern example of how a contractor gets stuff that doesn't have to be held accountable to transparency, and FOIA, look at those special warehouses and buildings they supposedly built for the metamaterials, right? Which never were done, but they made the claim. And of course, if you FOIA, you get nowhere, and they know that. The U.S. government business model is a combination, when it serves their purposes, of private enterprise and government. I know that from my own firsthand experience. Real quickly, when I worked at Lawrence Livermore Lab, we lost our manager after a few months. She left because they told her you weren't going to get promoted because you didn't have a degree and you were a woman. That's how it was back then. It was wrong. So we had no boss for 6 months. We could do anything we wanted. I worked over a year straight without a day off. I got into all kinds of things because I didn't have a clearance, but they needed a classified view graph tracking system written because none existed, and I found that out. So I wrote it. And I got to see all kinds of projects and stuff that was not accounted for in the UFO literature. I looked all over for New Mexico, Sandia, because Lawrence Livermore Lab, as you know, has agreements with Sandia. Sandia was right across the street. That's where they did the nuclear, detonations on the side. The other side was designing more.
Is that work you did declassified now, Kal?
The classified view graph tracking system?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I wrote it in HyperCard back when there was that.
Wow.
Yeah, I used it
you're a computer programmer, huh?
Yeah, I was on the HyperCard development team. So I used HyperCard as a front end to a VAX system. And that's how it was done. Because I told people, and there was an article I showed on the last show I was on with Steve, and it's never been on the internet. I was written up in the media for government. UFO buff turns his attention to computers. And I did all this stuff for the government. The stuff that I'm going to send Erica Lukes tonight and Stephen tomorrow, the UFOCOM software, is written from these binary research and deployment systems I did, the BRADS, for years, using counterterrorism and all these other
and Kal, you probably should include Jeremy in your testing.
Oh, absolutely.
Jeremy, he's got this really great software for research that's just, it looks great. And I think
what is up with your software? I wanted to know more about your software.
Yeah, real quickly, because I just want to tell people the deliverables are moving this week, like I promised on Stephen's show. Stephen, is it possible to show a slide here?
Yeah, you can share your screen, and then I just have to approve it once you share it. So share whatever you want to share. You go down to the middle there and click share, and then choose what you want to share, and then it'll pop up on my screen, and I can share it for our audience here.
Okay.
And don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sharing it. Okay. So basically, I am sending Erica Lukes. I'm going to call her after the show. This is her, of course. She is going to be putting real archival material into the software that I've written for her. I've adapted it from.
She's great, by the way. I know.
Yeah, I just got into some of her shows and have been trying to catch up listening while I'm doing other things. Yeah, I think she's great too. I want to reach out to her and collaborate on some things.
Definitely. And so basically these cover many different areas. You can see down here I'm into a lot of different things. So she's not going to get all those because I don't think she's into that stuff. But she's going to get the UFO software, UFOComp, which is up here. And it has 4 basic areas. This has some 5 records in it. This is from the upcoming Heflin Expose book project. These are original photos that never been published before. And you can see here on them, the computer analysis that was done back in the 80s, way before Photoshop and the internet existed. And this is all coming out. These are from the archives that have been locked up. And so I'll be talking to her about what she wants. And what I'll be doing is making workflows to help her do her thing. I also want to say that we're starting to ship these here. You may remember these, Stevens. These are fiction.
This is great. When you put what is it? When you put hot coffee in it, the spaceships appear or disappear, right?
Actually, we haven't released the magic mugs yet.
Okay, the magic mugs is what I want. I want a magic mug.
These are conversation mugs. They're going to be on different subjects like Roswell and all. This is Billy Meyer. So you can see the Meyer photo here. Then you see a guy running by the recreation of it that was done. So we tell you exactly how to make your own fake ships. Here is Meyer's thing going around a tree. Here's locations I took undercover secretly, proving that the tree was never there. You can't argue with that stuff. Here's, products coming out that show people the truth. Don't be a foologist, So all this is coming out. And again, this stuff is being up. These are shipping.
And Billy Meyer must love you putting his photos on products.
Well, I can legally do it.
How dare someone else make money off of my bullshit pictures, Kal Korff? Fuck you. Yeah.
So real
You
quick,
just broke it. That was the first swear of the stream right there. Now you can't monetize this.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know about that?
No.
Yeah, when I'm in guess, you're not supposed to swear, so otherwise they can demonetize the.
Well, I've been waiting
Let you
3
know.
weeks now for them to monetize me, so
Oh
we'll
yeah,
see.
well that's probably why, man. You gotta
I
knock
could
that
take
off.
this down and edit it. Yeah, I gotta stop cursing so much.
real quickly, I'm adding, these will ship in March, the updated versions. They have multimedia elements added to them. You point your smartphone to the QR codes and magic things happen. And then these are coming out, the revised star map that shows modern astronomical data. And this shows the stuff about Roswell I've been talking about because it's an update. Because all that original material has been found, it was in storage for over 20 years while I went around the world and did other things. So, I did not even know these original debris photos survived. I thought they were lost, but they're here and there's no question they're real. So that was just something I wanted to do. And then again, I had tables of some of the, witnesses and so on and all that. But we discussed all these, or at least some of them. So
this would be a great tool for working out this whole mess with Roswell, because it's just a tangled friggin' web of like
It is,
what
yeah.
he said, she said, and
yeah, I will tell you that's already been done. We used AI and machine learning to nail the frauds. And there's a scandals of Kevin Randall.
I want to see how close my intelligence was to your AI. So, because I have an idea who's a fraud.
I'm a computer guy, and I don't trust AI. That's just
I just don't trust the government. Period.
Oh, man, definitely not.
This is different. This is a forensic AI, meaning I'm actually writing a paper because it's a good paper for the computing field, and that is that you can use forensic AI to determine whether somebody faked several different documents or whatever. And it turns out that some of the Roswell authors have created witnesses that don't exist. There's no question that's true. So they're busted, and the science paper on this is going into the IEEE, I believe, for submission because it has implications for law enforcement and so on, independent of Roswell. Roswell was a good test case. But there's certain patterns here. When you start to see the same words come up over and over and over, there are reasons those same words are being used. And so I'm excited by this new level stuff because I've been playing with it for years and doing what I do in other areas and, reapplying this stuff back to UFO research and coming back to fight the fights that were fought and won, or at least were winning at that time before the millennium, and then being gone for about 20 years. And now this stuff is suddenly in vogue again. It needs to be taken to a new level and to the point where people can say, okay, this is the truth. I can verify it. I can test it myself. This is not true. And he is a denier, or she is, or he's not telling the truth, but at least you'll know. And you get it to that binary level and then it works, and that's what we're trying to do. We focus on binaries or we don't bother. And UFO comp, I first designed that in high school, but it started off with index cards, and it was only until HyperCard. That's why the press wrote about it. And I used HyperCard and all that stuff secretly for classified stuff as well as public stuff, and that's why I was in and out of Apple for 7.5 years and Lawrence Livermore Lab for years.
Did you, when you were at Lawrence Livermore Labs, did you see any unobtainium?
No unobtainium, but I'll tell you, the UFO thing was a hot potato. And because of that article, I got in trouble. And I'm going to publish that full article in the new book because this backstory needs to be in there so people understand. Because they're like, where the hell did this come from? And basically, they said that we can't have a UFO researcher working on the project you do because it'll make people think we're, doing Roswell or whatever, and that you need to clear everything with us first, especially since I was getting clearance. So I agreed that I would stay out of the media for years.
It's a hot button. I know somebody who was a UFO researcher, and then his day job said, like, you can't be doing interviews on TV and stuff and working here. So you gotta, choose whether you want your job or you want to keep doing this. And then he kind of just took a step back and kept his job.
You're talking about Strat, because I'm pretty sure like they paid cut that guy up.
Yeah, it could be.
We'll give you we'll cut his 50 grand, 70 a year sound plus benefits and retirement plan. Just don't talk about
you may have been getting too close to the truth about some of those black projects and the black hole of trillions of dollars that go into it. Sure.
Well, here's an example of some disinfo that I think needs to be settled. And if everything works, it's going to be on schedule to be settled by the summer. And I'm excited about this. You know about this effort, I think, Stephen. It's been delayed a year because of the pandemic. But around summer, the UFO Task Force is supposed to release their report. Around Roswell month, of course. That's going to be good PR. Whatever it says, I have no idea. But I do have a promise from the IG's office now that everything's theoretically getting back in order under this administration, to look at the two issues of the HF Harry Reid stuff. I sent you, Stephen, slides from that presentation prepared for the government. Secondly, I am contesting, claiming it's a fraud, because that's my hypothesis, this patent that they got, the 3 patents. I'm trying to have it independently looked at because I don't believe it's credible. I think they did it only because I picked up some intelligence in Asia that they were doing it hoping to head off any potential Chinese advancements because we're behind them in some areas, including the ability to make a miniature sun. China has beat us to that. So, and now they've got 2 probes around Mars. So I don't think the patent is valid. If it is valid, it will be great to be wrong and lose because they'll say, yeah, we really do have this space-time warper engine and we're just making jets for the hell of it, you know, wasting flying saucers. Or they'll say, you're right, it's not valid, it's struck down and reality comes back. Either way, we learn the truth, hopefully, unless the answer is the third way, which is it's classified, we can't talk about it, then you've got to write it out and do other things. But that's on schedule. It's been picked back up. I'm hoping in 2 months to find out from Kiviat where his lawsuit is over, you know, Pandolfi and Marriott and those guys, because that is still going on. The judge wanted it wrapped up last year, and she ordered it that way, but the pandemic torpedoed everything. So it's a mess now in that one thing, but the other projects are moving forward.
So that where did you get that figure for 65.9 million people believing the Roswell case?
Oh, because if you look at there's been surveys done over the years of what Americans believe in conspiracy. So it's from that series. The granddaddy of them all is JFK. 81% believed in it at its peak. Now it's about 61%, holding steady in the last 5 to 6 years. They haven't done a poll recently. Roswell, they won't do one till the anniversaries come up, like 75 and 80, because we're an anniversary society now, unfortunately.
Well, the software looks good. I'm looking forward to giving it a whirl. It might help me get a little more organized because I'm a mess. I just have folders and I copy stuff into folders, and that's not the best way to do things for sure.
Well, I want to explain something real quickly for both you and anybody who's our partners in testing this. There are workflows that I do, which I think might be of interest to you guys. There's also stuff that's unique to you that no one else cares about, and that's fine. So what I want to do under the create and deploy is you tell me what you want this thing to do. If everything's in there and you can spit it out in whatever formats or combos you want, what is it you want to do? And you know I do slideshows, a bunch of different things. So the idea is to, with a few clicks, start making sense and putting this data into some form where just a few clicks or touches, I can just do whatever I want to do with it. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but like admin, there's admin functions in there. In fact, to be honest, the version of this that you may end up with, Stephen, and you can probably appreciate this as an IT guy, is there's really admin, manage, browse, create, and deploy. Admin would be for people like you and I, but I'm just calling it admin now. But when it comes out to the public, version 1.0, this is the alpha, it'll be probably manage, manage, browse, create, deploy.
And this is just a thing for keeping track of stuff and organizing, or is this for like web posting? And does this post directly to a website?
It can do all of that. It's up to you. The advantage of this software is that you can take it with you on the road on your device, smartphone, whatever. It's got, a tablet and iPhone interface or smartphone interface. This is the 21.5-inch version on my particular, screen here. And then these are just random files put in there that I'm sending to Erica, the real data files. This Polaroid you see here is an original from the original first computer analysis ever done years ago in the 80s. This was part of the work I was doing with Friedman when I was trying to tell him the bad news about the Heflin case. So I'm sending some samples with real data in there to Erica and others, and then they will do what they want with it. Erica, I assume, will populate it with her stuff, and she can keep whatever. It's her business.
How did you build this program? And where's like, can you kind of show us like the back end? I want to see under the hood a little bit. I don't know.
Well, I can't. This is a screenshot. I can't. This is a screenshot from of the final thing I'm shipping, so I can't boot it and stay connected.
Stay with us. Yeah. Well, I could put you guys in touch with each other. And
I'd like to check that out, Kal. That's super interesting what you're doing. And just to give you a little introduction to me and what I'm kind of working on, I put together a team of scientists to vet guys like Bob Lazar or Mark McCandlish or, any number of these people who've, claimed to worked on, projects doing anti-gravity for the government. We found a lot of research and also reports on real research, anti-gravity kind of research that's been done by the government and Boeing and aerospace companies and stuff. Yeah. And we're kind of reaching out to like all these guys and getting them to we're putting together a conference to talk about anti-gravity and to share ideas on, how we build the spaceships of the future, because, that is important about getting off this planet and the future of humanity is really what my goal is, to kind of merge our technology with that of an alien species and kind of think about these kinds of things in new ways. And maybe Roswell isn't the smoking gun we hope for, but it certainly gets my gears turning about these kinds of things with that von Neumann stuff and von Neumann probes. But we certainly I want you to check out what we're doing this weekend. We have APEC conference coming up. It's the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference, and we actually have a guy from Boeing and a guy from Airbus who are going to be presenting this weekend on some of their research that has been done by those companies into anti-gravity. So cool physics.
And are you doing? You're doing a lot of your own experiments.
Yeah, we have a lab too.
He's actually building stuff, Kal.
We're building and testing claims of stuff. So like we're like calling bullshit on all these people that create this. Here I got my flying thing, and this is how you build it. Okay, well we're gonna build one and test all your theory and break it all down and throw it on a whiteboard and build the thing and then show everyone that it doesn't work, so they don't waste their time. And
I always wondered that about Mark McCandlish ARV. He claims that his drawing is like 100% accurate. Well, then why don't you build a scale model of it and show us this thing floating around?
I'm building one right now. And
are you really? Awesome. Yeah, get those capacitors.
I was just finding the coils for it last night.
Get those capacitors and copper coils going there, alien scientist. I want to see if it works. You got to show me if it works. I'm betting it doesn't, but okay.
Hey, if it does, you'll be the first to know. We'll see, So
I want to take a ride in your spaceship when you get it working there, Jeremy,
definitely,
for sure.
By the way, just so you know, this really is real. This was the first version 1.0 of the conversation mug here. And you can see here, we changed the design because the print had to be bigger. You can see Meyer's photo. And then you can see on the back here, the recreation that was done. Exactly. And then we found the string, of course, many, many years ago.
He's the one that made the cakes and stuff out of like silver things. Yeah.
Yeah, we show you how to do that. So that's why we call them fake ships, because they are fake. To call them spaceships is to insult real spaceships. We don't want to do that.
Right. In fact, if they can do interstellar warp drive, then they probably have invisibility cloaks. So.
No, it's more warped drive, warped mind of Billy Meyer. The guys.
Oh yeah. This is
here's an excellent question for both of you guys. I don't know if either of you saw the Walter Bosley episode, but every time I try to explain his theory on Roswell, I just mangle it. But he believes that what happened at Roswell may have been Project Paperclip scientists and early rocket spacecraft tests that came down, and that was the reason for the cover up and the secrecy and things like that. What do you guys think of that potential theory?
I don't believe it's true, and I'll tell you why. Do you remember the ghost rockets and the Scandinavian UFO mysteries of 1946 and 47? Do you remember those reports in that area of the world?
Yeah, I remember hearing about it.
Okay, there were a lot of them. We now know, only because the Soviet Union imploded in 1991, that those were all Russian tests. They had a bunch of stuff they captured up there. and were flying all kinds of stuff and kept it secret. Again, I can only tell you what I looked at when I was given the honor of writing the classified view graph tracking system. I had a real index of real stuff because I had to test the real thing. We couldn't use simulated data beyond a certain point. And as far as I know, all of the secret stuff that was done with Paperclip. Paperclip had two main levels of compartmentalization. At the high level, there was the public way to handle and spin Paperclip because it was politically wrong. For one, we're supposed to be the moral superpower, right? But yet we are letting Nazis and former members of the SS help us because we want to beat the Russians. Forget who they killed or what they did, or they were part of a genocidal regime. And then there were the scientists in Paperclip who were very, very useful. Ironically, one is up the hill here at the university. He submitted a paper at Eric Davis's request for the ATIP project. It's a complete crank thing, but he did, and I just had to shake my head at that because it turns out that the former chief scientist for Area 51 is neighbors with Harry Reid. Wow, what a small world in Nevada. Yeah.
Can I stop this share now then? Do you want to?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that down so we get. Yeah, so I don't even know where to go from here. I guess like I said, the biggest problem that I have with all this.
I'm going to read Kal's book. He's going to send it to me, and we'll pick it up after that when I have some notes for him. So.
Yeah. And listen, I'm glad that we can have people that can just civilly disagree, and it doesn't turn into like some kind of shouting match, because we're all interested and we want to all get to the truth. Kal has his own perspective, and I know that Jeremy's been really digging into the material side of things. That's what his interest is. Jeremy wants to get his hands on that stuff. And test it himself.
I want it in my lab, and I don't think Clifford Mahooty or who's the other guy that goes out into the desert and collects the Roswell. He does the archaeological digs out there. You know what I'm talking about, Kal.
Good luck with any.
Yeah, good luck with that. They have a bunch of tinfoil from what they showed me when I met the guy in 2009 in Albuquerque.
There are cans from 1932 that got buried in the desert. Yeah,
but unfortunately, it is all stories, and I don't see any actionable intelligence or anything scientific that I could really move forward on as of yet, unless they audit Battelle and really like do a whole overview of that organization and stuff. But again, that's not likely to happen, and it's just the way it is, man. But yeah, I want to check out Kal's book, and you should definitely get in touch with me after the show.
Yeah, I'm willing to work with anybody who is the logical person to work with. I've worked with people who are, I was friends with Wendell Stephen, but to be honest with everyone, what came between us was I was the journalist who broke the story about his child molestation problems, and he went to prison for it. So,
yeah, kind of blew a hole in his credibility there, Mr. Korff.
Well, it just. I'm not going to be friends with a child molester. I'm sorry. I draw a line, at least one line somewhere. And, that's kind of obvious. And a lot of people don't talk about that part of him because it's an inconvenient truth, to quote Al Gore, I guess. But anyway, so again, I'll work with anybody, even if I don't like the person, in a common quest to find the truth.
Kal.
Yeah, come on, bro.
Come on, bro.
I'm sure you would like him. He talks all this science stuff that'll make your brain hurt. Like, I'm pretty into science, but Jeremy starts
I'm just kidding. I'm just busting
protons and neutrons and all this shit, and my brain hurts.
It's not worth wasting electrons on. It's one of my favorite expressions. And then I do get people who say, "What's an electron?" It's like, never mind. But anyway.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I don't want to keep you guys too much longer.
How long was this show supposed to be?
I didn't have a set time, but we're at 90 minutes now.
Yeah, we're in an hour and a half now. That's all the goldfish out there the attention spans can handle. So,
if I can just bring up something, I want everyone to be clear on what the UFO comp software is and is not. I am releasing it tonight and tomorrow to a small group of people who will beat it up and populate it with real data, people who are everything from ordinary users to IT guys, and I want the honest truth. I then want them to think in a different way, because hopefully the software will get them to think about doing things a bit differently and say, well, how about a workflow that helps me get XYZ done? I'll take a look at that, and I'll talk to Roy if I need to bug him and say, let's try to work this on it. I'll involve Roy. Roy builds his own stuff too. Roy built his first essential airplane. I mean, the guy's a genius. He's like a real Tony Stark type guy, except he's real. Reminds me of some of the stuff you've said. So I can't wait to get you guys talking. And of course, Stephen, you've heard of Roy. You'll be in touch soon.
Yeah.
Erica have the 27-inch IMAX screen, so I have to scale up everything. But I'll have to have you take screenshots and send them back to me so I can see what to do with that extra real estate, which I don't have. I love seeing the UFOCOM system on all 3 monitors. It's got a SETI module, which I'll show later, which talks about the SETI stuff. So in answer to your question, this can be a standalone app that you can take your stuff with you in the field, on the road, anywhere you need to go. Or you can have it be a front end to any back end. You could even use it as simple GUI to some SQL god-awful nightmare database on the back end. You know, it runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, it runs on iOS, until it is frozen and released as 1.0 for the public, free, by the way. And cases will be modules in it. We'll deal with Android later once we know how the other platforms play, because then it'll be a formality to port it to Android. But absolutely be web-based. It has a DNA in it, as in distributed network architecture. It uses the FileMaker engine by Apple Claris. So we used to work at that company many years ago. So, you know, it's just wonderful. And what's good is that, you know, it's just great to take these pieces of these other Frankenstein databases like Terrorist Tracker and stick it in there and say, okay, change it from Al-Qaeda to MUFON or whatever. And, you know, same idea, you know, and reconstruct them to tailor it for UFO research. So.
Yeah, I have a whole database team working on. We've been like compiling databases and just archive material on like government and private anti-gravity research, or any kind of really research related to, you know, subjects any way and form, kind of related to that. So it'd be cool to hook you up with some of the people on my team and see if we could there might be some room for collaboration there.
Yeah, just so you know, the next phase of this, other than getting it to the few key people, is I've got to contact others like Jan Aldrich. I've known him for many years. We've never really directly worked on things together. We respect each other. He, of course, is involved in the Digitization Archive project, and there's you know, Isaac Coy in England. I need to talk to him, because being a library sciences outstanding award recipient from when I was a little boy, I've loved this stuff. We have to come up with taxonomies, metadata, how to handle naming conventions.
Oh, absolutely. This is a complex project.
And and as you know, some of it's determined by the data. You know, well, I don't have a field for that, but I got this kind of piece of data, so now I need that. So I was shocked when we started doing, not shocked, but it was like, okay, I understand why it's saying that. When we started doing the researchers, and some of them did make up stuff, invented people who don't really exist, like Catholic nuns and others. To catch them using the same lingo in the descriptions of what the witness supposedly said, that was interesting, because it does show that, you know, they're busted, and that needs to be made out to the public. And so we want to work with.
I wonder if you could like plug Lord of the Rings in there and find all the fake data points, and then like use it to like correct your story. You know, if like you plugged your, like, you know, your novel in there, you know.
Well, on Lord of the Rings, real quickly, I'm shocked at people who don't understand that it's essentially, Game of Thrones is essentially Lord of the Rings redone. If you tell a Game of Thrones fanatic that, they'll want to, you know, knife you or sword you or whatever.
I know nothing about that, but
you know,
I'm using it as an example.
Practically
maybe you could use the matchups, you know, plug in all the Game of Thrones data with all Lord of the Rings and see if it can actually tell the difference. Like, oh.
Well, he admits that he was inspired by it, but, you know, just like he doesn't use George R. Martin, he uses R.R. Martin, because the other George Martin is way more famous, you know, the Beatles producer, you know. So anyway, I'll talk to Jan and find out what they're doing. They have their own database projects, and the idea is to get us all on the same page. That's where this is leading to.
Yeah,
And then
Michael
once
Stratt
we
is
come
another
up
one I
with a
want.
work document that everyone will sign off on, everyone
Yeah.
hopefully will then say, okay, I'm going to name my files this way, just like they do, the taxonomies. And then we'll take a look at final workflows. And then once we lock it down, I will release it to the public free. And it's got buttons for sightings, radar cases, SETI, landing cases, government documents, research archives, electromagnetic cases, physical trace cases, all the categories of evidence. Because I told you many years ago as a kid, and it's in the main thing, it's with, that, you know, this close encounter of first, second, third kind doesn't go far enough. Okay, it needs to be more detailed. But he told me that that was just a sop to Hollywood, and he went with the money. Fine, I understand that. Then he tried to do fourth and fifth kind. It's like, no. You need to break it down.
It needs to be a table of categories with just check marks in each box.
Exactly.
Really.
So I had invented the 6 category system where basically sightings were also photographs and movies taken were photographs, because photographs are a type of sighting. They supposedly have a piece of evidence to back up the sighting, the photo, if it's real, but it's still a sighting. But if I say close encounter of the first kind, you have no idea whether it's a sighting, whether it's a photo, whether I didn't see anything, something showed up on the film. There's those cases. So I broke this all down years ago, had massive card index files, then got into computers. Finally, when I went to Apple, started at Atari, gave APRO and other people computers over the years, and then quietly helped them over the years secretly on some of this stuff. You know, like some of the early Roswell researchers. And this is really revisiting that and saying, well, now there's all this stuff here, modern technology, smartphones. As far as I'm concerned, every smartphone is a potential Mars lander explorer, theoretically. If UFO's flying around, where's all the bazillion smartphone photos that should be there if there's cause and effect? Who knows? They're not there. So we need something where everybody can put all the data in a platform, agree that this is how we handle it, and the ufology will separate from the ufology as that process unfolds.
Yeah. I think we also need like an Alexandria type project where, you know, like where they're trying to digitize all these books or texts and, you know, and documents and stuff. Because I guess Michael Stratt has one of the largest UFO databases on the planet. Apparently, he's got just warehouses full of documents. He's like accumulated every major database that's ever existed. He's like really into this, so that would be great to get if we could get his files with my like scientific database and put them all in like a place.
Yeah, funnel it all to one place. I would love to see some of that stuff. I know Stratt's got a huge monster collection of stuff, like of every UFO case.
It would require a really coordinated effort of a, you know, a lot of people, but you know, the payoff would be worth it because there's so many people in the community that would, you know, that need, we know the need, this is what needs to happen. This is the next step for ufology.
Right. And also, you've got to not only put the data under one virtual house, so to speak, but then you've got to mine it, and you've got to mine it properly. And that's where the fun begins, because one thing I'm not going to do is open this up to everybody right out the gate, because what's going to happen is there's going to be people like Mikey Horn type who will sit there and say, oh, I can use the same function to go lie to people and rip them off. You know, no. So what I'm going to do is, again, is work.
Poor Mikey, you're not welcome in our alpha test, Mikey Horn. He watches every show, by the way. He watches every show here. So hi, Mikey Horn.
Well, there is a Billy Meyer module coming out. You know,
is it going to have the laser gun? I love the laser gun. They lent him a laser gun.
You know that the laser gun was found. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The toy from the 70s. Sure.
Yeah, but I as I recall, that was a mannequin holding it. Phil Langdon noticed the hand issue wasn't quite right, but who knows what median hands.
This has been fun, guys, and I want to thank you both for doing this. And you know, maybe we have both. I think I learned a lot tonight, and I'm glad to know both of you guys. It's good to get to talk to you. And
Stephen, if you're open to this, why don't we do this? He hasn't seen the book, and it doesn't matter that I wrote it. It's just a set of data that goes back to the old times that anybody should know is foundational. Have him go through it, and, you know, let's keep each other updated. If he's got something that I'm wrong, I'll say. In fact, I'll make you this promise. If I'm wrong on Roswell, I promise you I'll come on your show first and say I'm wrong. you know, because I don't have an ego in this. I want the truth. And
Right.
that's
Sure.
Hey, I just try to play devil's advocate because I want the truth as well. And I think if anyone has it, it would be, you know, Wright Patterson or Battelle or something. But
I'm betting
again,
Battelle has it. If these
if
materials
anyone's got
exist,
it,
Battelle
then
knows about it. Yeah.
yeah.
for sure. But yeah, I'm after that kind of stuff because that's actionable intelligence. It's tangible
Right.
scientific data. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't do nothing with stories. You can't
Right.
build
Yeah,
a
look at
spaceship
that.
with stories. You
Some
know?
Spooky in the live chat says, I'd like to see a part 2. So would I.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
You
We'll
know,
do a follow up on this once Steve Cambion gets, you know, the big boost from maybe some of that fame from Tim Pool will wear off on.
Hey, I hope so. Rub it on me, brother. I need all the help I can get. Yeah, and good for you. What an
Hopefully
amazing
I've
experience.
introduced some of this crowd of like I got a flux of like 5,000, maybe 10,000 new subscribers on YouTube and a flood of new Twitter followers. So hopefully I introduced some people to your work, Kal, and your work as well, Steve, because I'm a big fan of both. And I wouldn't have made this connection if that weren't the case. And you know,
Yeah, it's so funny to me because I started reading Jeremy's website like you were one of the first people that had a website that was into this stuff, early website. I remember reading it for years, and it's kind of bizarre and surreal to me that years later we're friends, and you know that's awesome because I never would have thought that, you know, reading it 10 years ago when you know you had a website real early, didn't you? You had like one of the early websites.
2008 and then probably 2009 when I started all that, you know, and I got inspired from American Anti-Gravity, who's Tim Ventura, and he's the one running our APEC you know, propulsion conference right now.
That's awesome.
Which is awesome because, you know, it's just keeping the dream alive, man. You know, I don't know.
Well, that's awesome. All right. Well,
are you wearing a Star Wars shirt?
Yeah, I am actually.
Oh, I got flack for wearing my Star Wars shirt on the show. You saw me. I had the Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers on my shirt, and people were like, "Oh!" One of the top comments on the Tim's video was, "Oh, he's wearing a Star Wars shirt. We can immediately discredit anything he says."
In that spirit here.
Well, I'm not credible.
Look
Yeah,
at all of us, man.
This is Star Wars Abbey Road. Star Wars Abbey Road. There you go.
I'm not credible to begin with.
Oh, you got a lightsaber. Okay.
In fact, don't make me use this.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap things up here. I'm gonna throw you guys both out and play a short bumper, and I will be right back with you. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks again for doing this.
Thanks,
I really
Kal.
appreciate it. I'm gonna throw you out, and then I'm gonna throw you out, and well, friends, what an amazing evening it has been to talk to two of my favorite people that are into these subjects. And I want to thank both of them again. It's just, this series is just got so many twists and turns. You know, we go from believing it to maybe not so much, to thinking this person is credible, to thinking maybe they're not so credible. This is one of the greatest mysteries, and there's so many twists and turns in it. I can't wait to see what happens next. We're going to be continuing our series. I'm hopeful that we're going to get Don Schmidt to appear, but I'm still waiting for him to confirm. Stay tuned, friends, because we're going to keep drilling down on this until we get to some kind of consensus. All right, friends. I want to thank you all for joining me. I'm always happy when there's an audience. Thank you so much for being a part of mine. Until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.